Variables Part 1. In this tutorial, we will cover the basics of variables and data types. You've probably used variables earlier in your life, in high school, in algebra lessons, if you remember the x and y's and all those equations. So it might look a little bit familiar, but it's different. Okay, let's get to it. First thing we will do is we will go to the cheat sheet, and under variables we will copy the 4 lines and copy it into the main method. Well, let's start with the anatomy of a variable. The first thing you need to do when you declare a variable is declare its type. This variable type is int. Next, you declare the variable name. This can be anything. You can use numbers and letters to name your variable, but we will call our int num. The equal sign does not actually mean equals, because 1 is not actually equal to the word num. In this occasion, it means set or assign. Set num or assign to 1. So the value of num is 1. And don't forget the semicolon, of course. An int can hold only numbers, it can't hold letters. Let's see the error. Syntax error. Yeah, it's a syntax error. And it can't hold decimals, you can't do something like this. Let's see the error. Type mismatch. Cannot convert from double to int. So our next line is a double. This one can hold decimals like 0.5, 9.5, 00. It can also hold whole numbers and as decimals, but let's leave it as 0.5 for now. As you can see, you declare it the same as an int. The same rules apply here. A string you've already seen. A string can hold letters, other characters and numbers, also decimals. A string has different rules to it. We'll have to cover them in their own lesson, but just know they can hold anything you can type, and it must be inside of a quotes. The final one we have here is a boolean. It can hold 2 values, true or false. We will not be using it now. We will using this data type when we get to ifs and arguments. But those are the most common you will see and use. Actually, when it comes to decimals, double is the size of 8 bytes in Java, if I'm correct, and the float is half that. A data type named float. The thing with float is, as you can see, we have an error, even though it's actually a decimal. For a float you need to add an F at the end, so Java will know it's a float. And as I said, if you need less memory, use a float, because it only costs 4 bytes, as double costs 8 bytes. But a double has a larger range and it's a more precise, it has more precise decimals and numbers, so it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do complex math operations, use a double. If you're going to use graphics, use float, because here you need to be less accurate and need to conserve more memory. Okay, let's move on. Let's show you basic use and manipulation of variables. And also I want to show you another way to declare variables. You can also declare a few variables together, like the ones we want to create: x, y, and res. And you don't have to give them values. You can also declare one variable and use it later. After you declare a variable, you can use it anywhere inside the scope. In our case, the scope is between the parentheses of the main method, the execute of the main method. Let's assign values to these variables. X will be equals 1, y will equal 3, and the result will be x plus y. The plus here is called an operator. We will cover these in the next lesson. What it does is just add the x to the y. 1 plus 3, or let's say it was 4, it would be 1 plus 4. A variable can hold any number and its values can change. Okay, let's output it so we can see the result in the console. We will use s.o to output. Let's put a string first to show what we are calculating. 1 plus 3 equals. Here the plus is not plus. This operator is for incrementing the next argument, which is in this case a variable, res. Let's close it with a semicolon. And let's see what this does. 1 plus 3 equals 4. Correct. Okay, let's output the string s. s.o, and we will assign s to between its parentheses. Okay. A string can also get special characters like next line. To add the next line, we will write /n. This will add an empty line between those lines. As you can see, we have an empty line. Now let's say we wanted another line after the sum text, another text. Let's run it and you will see it will print it in the next line. You also have this small space. We can remove it and there's no problem. You will not see the n. Okay, and that's it for this lesson. I've shown you the anatomy of variables. We've shown you the double data type, the string data type, the boolean. We've shown you how to declare variables. Usually a good practice is to declare all your variables at the top and then use them. And we've shown you a simple way to manipulate variables and how to display them to the console. You don't have to understand all of this right away. You will get it once you will see how it's used. You only need to remember it as this is the most basic syntax after outputting and getting input. In the next part of the course, you will see a lot of examples of me using variables and actually all of the syntax. If you don't understand this, you may use the Q&A of this course, contact me, or even find other resources online, as there are thousands of tutorials on the subject. Maybe you'll find somewhere that explains better than me, and then you can come back to this course and continue with what I'm teaching and showing. And that's it for this lesson.